Hey guys, this is Mitch with FinePoint CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to create an event system inside of Godot. So we're going to go through the process of building out our animations for our door event. If you guys remember our design, we basically have an event that opens up a door and kind of guides the user into that room where we're going to play the sound of a child laughter that's kind of creepy. So that'll be fun, and we're going to design it in an extendable and reusable way. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about audio design and about how to loop audio files. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to upgrade to the latest beta. We were on beta 5. Now we're going to be moving to beta 7. And I know beta 8 is due to be released probably really soon, but at the time of the recording, 7 is the latest, so that's what we're going to upgrade to. So let's take a look at what beta 6 has, and let's talk about some of the features, and then we'll look at 7 and see what those features are as well. Now, with 6, it looks like they fixed some cyclical issues. It looks like they changed a lot of the multiplayer stuff, and there was some canvas environment changes, and it looks like there's some optimizations with the blend tree. Here's some of the what's new. And for the most part, it's just stuff like multiplayer RPC stuff, some peer acting as server stuff for multiplayer, and it looks like there is a lot of fixes on some rendering and things like that. One of the big fixes is pretty much just the cyclical improvement with GDScript 2.0, which is nice. On the beta 7, they did a lot of Android fixes and a bunch of C# changes. So for the most part, it's going to affect C#, and unfortunately, I didn't cover it in the C# side, but that's okay. We can do that when we move to beta 8. But what's new for us is we have GLES 3 support for Android. We've moved to Android 21, which is good. And we did some editor changes that has some black OLED theme and had some Vulkan changes as well. So there's really not a whole lot here. So let's go ahead and upgrade and open up our project. So I will be right back. So I've just opened up the project, and it looks like my output has a little blocker here, a little red dot. So it looks like we have a bunch of errors. So invalid argument for create should be array RID, but is array object. So it looks like they did some changes to arrays, and I have some issues. So let's take a look. Invalid argument create function should be array.rid. So let's hit .rid. Let's see if that gets me anything. It does not. So .get_rid. There we go. And that will fix that. And then we'll come down here, pull this over. Yep, it looks like same thing. .getRID. There we go. Is there any more? Not in this one. Where's my next one? Let's see. It looks like enemy.gd. So let's click right here. And same thing. Simple enough. There we go. Awesome. So if we hit play, sweet. Our game plays. Everything seems to be working. Now let's go build our door. All right. So the first thing we have to do is we actually need to make a door for our project. So one of the big things about our event system that we need a door that can be opened. So let's go and grab this door from our child's room here. And first, let's actually make this a little bit tinier because it's a little bit too large, I think, to be a proper door. And then let's right click, add in a child node, and let's add in a static body node. And let's drag this guy up here, and let's find a nice place for it. So we'll just kind of drag it out here like so. And our door is probably just a little bit too thin, so let's make it a touch thicker. There we go. And let's click on our static body. And let's make sure we latch it right here on the edge of the object of this actual door here. And the reason why is because when we put our door underneath it, when we click on our static body, now when we rotate it, it's going to rotate like a door. And I mean, this is stuff that most of us probably already know, but it is still nice to have. So you can see that we can basically just grab this door and we can open it. So that's exciting and useful. So once we have this, we need to get some kind of collision. So let's select our actual CSG mesh and let's uncheck the collision because we don't need this thing to have collision. We need a collision box for our static body to work. Static bodies are much like kinematic bodies in the sense that they can't work without having some kind of collision attached to them. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we're going to right click it, add a child node, and add in a collision shape 3D. And we're going to make that shape into a box shape like that. And we're going to drag this guy like so. And we'll scale this guy down so it matches up like that. And we'll scale this guy up so it matches like that. And then we'll scale this guy in so it matches just like that. And there we go. We have ourselves a bit of collision. And actually, I think it might be a touch bit too big. So let's make it a bit smaller. Maybe pull it back a tiny bit. There we go. And I think that will work. It still might be a touch too big, but it's real close to what we need. There we go. And now we also need an animation player. When the player hits that area 2D, or in this case, area 3D over here, because part of our requirements is that we're going to have it so that the character can walk in and it will open up that door, right? So we need some kind of animation player to play that animation. So we're going to right click our static body. We will add in an animation player node like that. And what we can do is we can double click our static body 3D and type door. And then we should be good to go. That's pretty much everything that we need for our door to work. Now what we can do is we can right click it and save branch as scene. And let's save our branch as door.tscn in our scene. So we'll click save. And there we go. Now we have a door. Now, if we open up our scene here, you will see we have our door, but it's not directly in center, and we need it to be centered. So if we select our static body and we go to transform and we go 0 like that, and then 0, that'll snap us back to the center, and that's pretty much where we want to be. Now, if we go back to our level 1, you'll see that it kind of threw this door way off in the distance. So if we just kind of drag this guy back, that's common when we do this. So we could just kind of do that. And then we can come back into our door here and let's set up our animations. Now, with our animations, all we need to do is click on our animation player, click on animation and click new. And then let's just call it open. And that's going to allow us to open our door. So we'll have 3 animations at least at current. We'll have 3 animations. We're going to need multiple ones because during this, we're going to be playing some sound, right? And we want our sound to have some variation. And without having multiple animations, it's really hard to have a variation of sound. So what we'll do is we'll click on our door and then we'll click on rotation like that and use Bezier curves and hit create. And then we'll drag this to 1 and we'll pull this guy out to something like that, give or take. And then we will click on our keyframe. So now we have an animation of our door opening. And then we also need to make an animation of it closing. And I know you're thinking, well, okay, but remember how we did the animation reverse, right? We just basically say, hey, we're going to reverse our animation. But unfortunately, that's not going to work because we're going to play different sounds based off of what the door is doing. So what we can do is we can click on our animation, click new, and type close. And then we can head over to 1, click on our keyframe and click create, and then come back to 0, go to open. Well, I guess go back to 1, right click this, copy it, go to close, go to 0, right click paste, and then hit keyframe here. And that will allow us to have a nice close animation. So now once we have that, we need to actually get our sound effects. And our sound effects, much like we've done before, is we're going to grab all of our sound effects from freesound.org. Now, I already have all my sounds downloaded, but if you guys want to, you can run in here and grab door creaks and door shut sounds and latching and things like that. And I already have my sounds downloaded right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these guys. I'm going to go into Godot here, and I'm going to drag them in and import them. And Godot has imported them, and we can actually start setting up our sound effects. Now, in my case, I have, if I unmute the volume here, I have quite a few sound effects, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. We'll probably have to replace a lot of them in the future, but it'll at least give us something to work with for now. So the first one that we have is us opening our door. Now, in order to play sounds, we actually need to have some way of playing those sounds. So we can right click our static body node here. We can click add child node and add in an audio stream player 3D like that. And that will allow us to have spatial audio. So that way we can actually play our audio in a 3D way. It actually will throw the audio out, and it will get quieter the farther away you are from it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the volume to -10 dB because we don't want to make it way too loud. And what I'm going to also do is I'm going to set the max distance to something simple like 10. I think if you're 10 meters away, you really shouldn't hear too much in terms of door squeaking. We can, of course, adjust that in the future. Now, when we want to do an open sound on our animation, we can just click on add track and add an audio playback track. And then from here, we'll just be able to pick a node. In our case, it's going to be the audio stream player because that's the only audio player we have. So we'll click OK. And then we can come in here and grab our audio sounds. Now, in my case, we have a door open somewhere in here. I think it's just short open, if I remember correctly. So we'll just drag that guy in like that, and you can hear it opening up, which is good. I think that sounds all right for the most part. Like I said, we're probably going to get some sound fatigue from this sound effect. So what we should do is probably set it up so that the sound doesn't repeat that often. So we only want a few doors to squeak and a few doors to not squeak, if that makes sense. That way we're kind of varying up our sounds. Now, we also need a way to almost like unlock that door. So one of the things you'll notice is when you hit play, the door just opens, but there's no sound of it kind of opening, if that makes sense. When you unlatch a door, it kind of makes that clicking sound. So we have a door click open quick right here, and we can use that to kind of help with the door open sound. So if we come in here and hit play, you'll see that sounds a bit better, a bit more interaction based, right? The user grabbed the door and then opened it. And that to me sounds a bit better. It's a more layered sound effect than us just squeaking a door open. So now that we have this, we can do the same thing for close. So let's click on close. Let's click add track, audio playback track, audio stream player, and let's do our two sounds that it's going to be. So much like before, we need one for shutting. So we have a door shut somewhere in here, right here. We'll drag that guy in, and we have one for door clicking on close, which I believe is this one, the bedroom door shutting. So I'll drag that guy in, and we can drag and move this guy around by just clicking and dragging. And you'll see if I hit play, just like that. Now we do want to kind of pull this guy a bit closer. So you can see here, this is where it makes contact with the door, with the actual door frame itself, and then the door locks. So we want to make sure that it shuts and locks at the correct time frame. We don't want to continue our animation as it's locking because that wouldn't make logical sense. So we'll do that. And that's basically how we can do our open and our close animations. Now we do have one more animation that we have to do. When the player steps on to this area here, right, we want to set off an event that makes this door open really, really slow. And the easiest way to do that is with an animation. So what we'll do is we'll go in here, we'll click on our animation, we'll click new, and we'll call it door open slow. And then what we'll do is we'll click on our static body here. We will click on our rotation, hit create, and then set this to something like 4. And then we can pull this guy over here and go to our door open. And let's copy our rotation. And then let's go to door open slow. And then paste our rotation and put a keyframe. So now you'll see it's opening really nice and slow. And there we go. And now we need to add in our audio. So we just click on add track, audio playback track, audio stream player, and then we can come down here and add in our stuff. Now we do have an actual audio track for this called the Door Creak Slow. And I believe I have it right here. So we'll drag this guy in and we will let this play through, and it's probably going to be way too loud. So let's see. And there we go. Now, there is a sound at the end of this I'm not sure I'm a big fan of. If you hear right about here, there's that Wii U sound at the end. And it's the sound of the door kind of creaking back. Now, we could have that effect if we want to. If we wanted to pull this out to about here and then have it hyper extend. So what we would do is we'd pull this back like this and then have it kind of hyper extend right about here. If we come to our door and we grab our rotation here. Oh, Godot just crashed. So that's good news. So let's reopen that. Hopefully we didn't lose too much work. We probably lost everything. Awesome. We just lost all of our work. So I'm going to get us back to where we were and I will be right back. I wonder if it has to do with me creating keyframes in a weird way because I'm snapping a keyframe in halfway through. So let me do this. Let's try coming in here, clicking on this guy here, go to my inspector and extending it just slightly more than what it's supposed to be, drop a keyframe, and then just flipping these two keyframes. That's better, but I think that this guy has way too much. So let me take a look at the value, minus 55 versus minus 2. So let's try something like minus 3. Can I not change these? 0.3, like that. That's good. I think that'll work. It makes it feel nice. It makes it feel good. Now, once we have this, we have our door. Our door is pretty good. All we have to do is set up our event system. So to do that, we will head over to our level 1 wake up level. And if you remember our design said that when a user gets over here, it will fire off an event. And that event will fire off this door creaking open nice and slow. So what we can do is, it looks like my door also failed on that crash. So let me actually grab, thank goodness we actually have our scene of our door. So let's just drag this guy up in here and let's just drag him in here like this. And then we can just delete our old door. Also, we'll have to rename this to capital D instead. Capital D door, because that makes more sense. And we'll save that and we'll save that. And there we go. Now, for us to get this to actually fire off our event, we need to have an area 3D. Area 3Ds are non-collision areas, as in it won't stop the player from walking through it, but it does allow you to read collisions from the player and fire off events, which is usually what they're used for. So what we can do is just right-click our node 3D. If I close my level BSP, right-click, add in a child node, and add in an area 3D. Now it's right here, so I'm going to drag this guy to right here. And for area 3Ds to work, you need to have some kind of collision, right? Your player has to walk through something for it to actually work. And in our case, we'll just right-click it, add in a child node, and add in a collision shape 3D. And we'll click on shape and put in a new box shape. And then we just have to size it to work. So we'll just kind of grab this, we'll pull this open. Let me hit F to focus on this. And then we'll just kind of make this a decent size like so. And there we go. Now, with Area 3Ds, we should probably come up with some kind of Now, with events, we should probably come up with some kind of naming convention. As levels get larger and as you start making your stuff bigger and bigger and bigger and more complicated and more crazy and more complicated, you should always start with a naming convention of some kind. And in my case, I'm going to go with, I forgot who started it, but back when I worked in the industry, this was the similar naming convention that we used, which is where if we rename this, you type whatever the type is. So E in my case, because it's an event, E underscore, and then whatever that event relates to. So child door open slow. And there we go. And if you were to have something like an interactable object, you'd have I. So like an object that you can interact with, and use would be an I, and then an E for an event. And then you could also have something if you wanted for, I guess, enemy, you'd have to come up with a special thing for enemy. But it is very useful to have that. A lot of times people don't have naming conventions, but one of the nice thing about a naming convention is if you go E underscore, that's all of your events. Right? If it's interactable, you do I underscore, and that would be all of your interactable objects. So it's just something to keep in mind. Same thing with lights, and something I should have done, which I didn't, is all of these Omni lights should have L in front of them. If they all have L in front of them, then if I want to find my Omni lights, and I can show you, batch rename, and we'll just add a prefix of L underscore rename. If I come in here and I go, let's say I'm playing around with my level and I go L underscore, it will come up with all of my Omni lights. And that is the nice thing about a naming convention. So just be sure to check out and kind of rename your stuff and build out a naming convention for your game. It will save you a lot of time in the future. Now, once we have this, we need to set up our event. So what we can do is come up here to our node 3D and create a scene script. So we'll right click this guy and we'll attach a script and we'll just call it level 1 wake up without any spaces, and we'll hit enter. Now this is going to be a really simple script, so you'll probably, now this will be a very simple script. So what we'll do is we'll rip these guys out and we'll come into our E child door room open slow, go into our node and say on body enter. Now we have lots of different options here. And this is kind of one of the cool things about area 3Ds. And I've probably explained this before, but you have area entered and area exited. Area entered and area exited is only when area nodes collide with other area nodes. So that's really nice if you have like a flashlight or something and you want the enemy to collide with that flashlight and say, oh, I feel like the flashlight's on me or something like that. Area shape entered is really nice when you want a shape 3D to enter a area object and have it fire off events. Generally speaking, these four you'll probably never use. You will use them sometimes, but it's for me, it's very rare. And then down here, you have body entered and body exit, and then body shape entered and body shaped exit. In general, I use these two the most, which is body entered and body exit. Basically, they just fire off when a node 3D enters an area 3D. Now, if we just double click body entered, and then we click on our node 3D and hit connect, it will go ahead and create a function right here for us. Now, when the player enters this area, we need to actually play our child door opening. Now, this is going to be fine if we just wanted to say $ level BSP and then hunt down wherever our door is, and we'd have to really search for it. We could do that, or we can use the unique scene name feature inside of Godot. And it's a really cool feature that just recently got put in, but if you come down here and then you scroll down to wherever your door is. In my case, it's called door. And we double click it and let's rename it. Let's just call it child room door. And then let's right click it. And then let's come down to access as unique name. And what that means is that we can access this anywhere in the scene, in any of our scripts that are in that scene. We can access this just by using the % sign. So what we could do is just type get node quote % child room door. And that's all we have to do. And then we can just say dot get node, and we could fetch back our animation player. So animation player. And then we can just say dot play, and we can pass in our animation. Now in our case, our animation, if we go to our door, we click on our animation player, it's just door open slow. So we'll say door open slow. And there we go. That should do it. So now if we come back to our level 1 wake up and we hit play and we walk forward, you'll see there's our door, and we walk up and there we go. The door opens. Now, something that you'll notice is, well, first, we don't have sound. We can hear our guy walking, which is good, but the actual animation itself played, which is cool, but the sound did not play. So why is that? What happened? Well, let's take a look at some of the code here. So we're just playing an animation, and that's it. Well, what happens if we just play open and we hit play? Oh, whoops. I should probably hit play on the right one. And we walk forward. The sound plays. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but there's something to do with Godot where it's some kind of glitch or something, or maybe I set something up incorrectly, and maybe you guys can let me know in the comments below. Maybe there's something I did wrong, but I ran into this earlier. For whatever reason, Godot does not want to play the sound of the open door slow. I don't know, maybe if it's too long or something like that, but I'm going to do some more research on my end and try to figure out what's going on. But that's just something to keep in mind. Also, something that we should probably look at, and in our case, it's probably not going to be a problem, at least specifically for this, because our collision mesh is floating in space. But if we were to make this just slightly larger, if we come in here and just kind of make this just a little bit bigger and we hit play, well, wrong play. I should probably just temporarily go to project settings, come into our, where is it? Come into our run, and then change this to our level 1 wake up scene. So that way we can just hit play. That'll probably be a little bit better. But if we start walking forward, you'll notice that our door has already opened. And that's something that we have to keep in mind is either A, we cannot allow this guy to collide with anything. We just kind of have to pull it in. Or B, we have to check to see if the colliding object is our player. So we could come in here and just say if body is player, right? And then check to see if it's in the player group or something like that. Or we can cheat. And what I mean by cheating is instead of doing all of this, there is a thing called collision layers. And if we click on our object here, our little event area, you can see it's on layer 1. That means anything that's on layer 1 will collide with this guy. But we don't necessarily want that. What we should do, in my opinion, what we could do is we could just take this off of layer 1 and put this on layer 5 or something like that, right? Some kind of layer 1 or layer 5 or layer 16 or something like that. And then if we go to our player and we go to our player scene and click on our player like that, we can come down here and just add it to collision layer 5. And then if in our level 1 wake up, if we take a look, you'll see that we are still collided with that wall, right? We still have our collision shape colliding with that wall. But if we hit play and we head over here, you will notice that our door hasn't opened until we walk forward. Then our door opens. And that's good. That's exactly what we want. Though I do feel like my camera FOV is really, really, there we go. 30 was way too close. I don't know why my FOV was so close, but that made me feel a little nauseous. I was confused why it was so close. But you can see that that works. Now you'll also notice that if we wait until the animation is done and we go backwards, the animation plays again. So we have to counter code for that. We can't allow our player to just continuously fire off the same event over and over and over, especially if it's like an earth-shattering event, right? Oh, you know, rocks fell from the sky and blocked off the path behind you. You don't want to have it play that every single time. So we have to check for that. So we'll click on our script. We'll come up here and just add in a Boolean. So var, and in spirit of sticking with our naming convention here, E underscore child door open slow. We'll make that a Boolean. And then we'll just say if not E underscore child open. Well, that's not the right thing. Now I'll just copy this. So if not this, then do that. Else, and then we can just say E underscore child door open slow is equal to true. And that'll basically allow us to say this will run only one time, which is great. That's exactly what we want. Next, we need to set up our laughter sound that we have already built. Now, what we could do is we could follow what we did with our C# side if you are following that side as well. But actually, after some conversations with some people on Discord and things like that, it may be better to actually make this into a reusable component instead of a actual level-based thing. What I think we're going to do is we're just going to come up here and build a scene that basically allows us to play sounds, and we'll basically start building a library of events that we can use in the future for our projects. So what we'll do is we'll come over here, we'll click on our node 3D, and let's duplicate this guy. So Control D, and let's pull this open like this, over like this, and then we'll snap this guy like this, and we'll put him right about here. And basically the goal is that this will be an event trigger that's going to be, you know, kind of universal. So we'll want to make it a decent size so that way we can reuse it elsewhere. And then what we'll do is we'll rename this as E underscore, well, if I can type E underscore generic event like that. And then we will right click, add in a child node, and let's add in an audio stream player. Now this is going to be a generic event that is not distance based. So how we're going to separate this is we're going to have our scene based events and then our kind of generic events. Okay. And our generic events will basically do stuff like play sounds, or if we need maybe a trigger or something like that, we could probably do that. We could probably have some kind of animation trigger and, you know, do some fancy work that way. So what we'll do is we'll just right click this guy, attach a script, and let's just say E generic event, and that's totally fine. And what we can is first, we'll come over here, we'll right click, and we will make this as a scene, and we'll just call it E generic event, and we'll just drop it into our scenes just like that. And then we'll click on our generic event, we'll come over to our node, and we'll say on bodied enter, double click that guy, and we'll just connect it straight to our object here. Now, what we'll do is we'll basically just play a sound. But first, we need to actually set what that sound's going to be. So we'll come over here and we'll say at export var, and we will say audio to play. And then we'll come down here and we'll make that a type audio, an audio stream. And then we can come in here and just say var audio player. And we'll make that a type audio stream player like that. And then we'll just say audio player is equal to $ audio stream player. And that'll just pull back that audio stream player. And then we can just set our audio player dot stream equal to our audio to play. And then we can just play that. So audio player dot play, just like that. And that'll basically do it. Now, we might want to expand this a tiny bit because right now we don't have the ability to control our volume and we don't have the ability to tell us whether or not we can play it once or multiple times. Right now, we have it set up so that we can play it multiple times, but we might want to be able to play it only once. So, what we can do is we can come in here and just say at export var can play multiple, and we'll make that a type Boolean. And then we also, since we need to basically do what we're doing here in our level 1 wake up code, where we're checking if we've already played our sound as well, because we want to be able to play it one time as well, we'll just grab that as well. So var e underscore generic event played, and we'll set that as a Boolean as well. And then we could just come in here and say if can play multiple times, then just do this bit of code. Else, we're just going to basically say if E, not E, generic event played, then play this bit of code. And there you go. That'll allow us to play it multiple times. That'll also allow us to only play it one time. So that'll give us a lot of flexibility. Now, the last thing that we need to do is we need to set up. And now that I'm thinking about it, we actually could just pull this guy up here like this. We can also set up our audio play sound up here as well. So we could just say audio player dot underscore db, and then we can just set that equal to a value. Now, of course, we're going to need to set up a value up here, so we can just say at export var volume to play at, and we will set that as an integer. Actually, I think it needs to be a float. So we'll set this as a type float, and then we could just set this to volume to play at. And that should do it. And then we can actually come down here and remove this. That way we're not setting this every single frame or every single time the player enters it. So that way it's a little bit easier. And we also have introduced a slight bug where we need to come in here and we need to set an E underscore generic event played is equal to true. And that'll basically do our generic audio player for our project. So now if we click on this, you'll see we have an audio to play. We have a can play multiple times, and we have a volume to play at. And this volume to play at is in dB. So you might want to say in dB just to kind of give it a little bit more, explanation of what it does. That way we can actually, see it. And I think if I can just set this up correctly, there we go. And that should do it. So 0 is considered basically like an equal value, if that makes sense. And then if you go minus, it's going to make it quieter. If you go plus, it's going to be louder. So now we can just head over to our level 1 wake up, and you'll see we have this E generic event. And we could basically just rename this as E child room play laugh. And we can just come down here, grab our sound, come down to Creepy Girl Laugh, if I remember that's what it's called. We'll drag this guy in here. It can only play once, so we won't say multiple times. And our volume level will be -10. I think that'll be a pretty good volume level. And now, if we hit play, we walk forward, it'll open the door, just like that. And we can come in here, and we have a crash. Awesome. Non-existent function in base audio stream wave. Did I grab the wrong audio to play? That's my fault. So let's copy this guy and let's change these guys from audio to play to audio player. Let's refresh and let's try that again. On the bright side, all of our code is working. So we'll come over here and you'll hear the laughter. Now that's pretty loud. In my case, I kind of toned your guys's down so you won't hear it as much, but you'll see that it only plays once, which is perfect. That's what we want. And it actually came in here and did everything that we would expect. Now, if we set can play multiple times to true, let's see what that does. So we'll let this door open. it plays, and then it plays again. So that's going to give us a lot of flexibility in the future, and we'll need to update the other side of the pillow, the C# side, to make it a, more generic system. I agree that the generic system is definitely a better choice here. So once we have that, anytime we want to use this child room laugh, we can just drag in the scene and we're good to go. So that will save us a bunch of time. Now, from here, let's just add a little bit of background noise for our project. So right now, we don't have any background noise. I do have this creepy ambience that I've already downloaded. So, I have the background noise. But if you guys don't want to use my background noise, you guys can come in here into free sound and just type ambient noise, and you can come up with all sorts of ambient noise. They have a bunch of them. They have like soft static noise, which sounds awful. They have stuff like open bunker wind, which actually sounds really good. This one would be pretty good. You would need to use the attribution license, but this one actually is a very solid sound. They have stuff like dark drones and things like that. So if you want to have some kind of, specific sound, you guys can use that. In my case, I have a sound that's pre-built that I've already, built for this. And that sound is this sound right here. I'll turn it up for you guys. Which should be pretty creepy and not too shabby. Now, one of the things that we will need to do is we're going to need to adjust this actual sound so that it loops, because right now it doesn't really loop. So if I open it up in Windows Media Player here, which I can't remember the last time I've used Windows Media Player, so now I got to remember how this works. How does this work? There we go. And I turn on loop, you'll hear that right here, it cuts off because the guy ended the recording but didn't end the actual recording of the sound file. So we need to actually pull this into an audio editor to edit it so that way it works for us. So let's close this and let's open up Audacity. And if you guys don't have Audacity, you should totally download it. Audacity is an awesome program. It will save you a bunch of time, trouble, when you're doing your audio editing. And I seem to have broken the interface a little bit. Oh no, I broke it real bad. Let me close this and reopen it. Let's see if that helps. Now, if you don't have Audacity, I'll leave a link in the description below to where you can actually download it. But the URL is audacityteam.org. And if you just click the download and then you run through the install, it'll take 2 seconds. And I'll go through a much more detailed tutorial on Audacity and how to use it, why it's useful, things like that in the future when I talk about recording your own audio effects. So definitely look forward to that. But let's open up Audacity here and let me see if, there we go. So it looks like for some reason it just got corrupted or something when I opened it. But let me drag this guy down for you. But what we can do is just open up our sounds folder and then drag our creepy ambience in, and you can hear the creepy ambience. Which isn't too bad. But down here, it has this cutoff right here. So we need to get rid of that. So if you just click and drag, you can select portions of an audio file. Now we can just hit delete and we'll be good to go. So we'll just click delete and there we are. Now this still will not loop. So if I hit play, you guys will hear it playing, and I'll probably have to turn it down just a tiny bit. There we go. And you'll see that once this guy gets here, you'll hear an audible click. And it actually did not click very much, which actually means that we might have gotten it just perfect. And we pretty much got it perfect, which is pretty rare. But I will show you guys a technique to kind of handle this if you have an audible click. So one of the important things is if you come into your waveform, it needs to end with a perfect silence. If it doesn't, it will audibly clip and you'll have a problem with your audio. Now, what you can do also, if I duplicate this, I'm going to hit Control A, copy, Control V, and I'm going to mute this track so that way we actually don't have, this audio track playing. But if I come back here and I zoom in nice and tight like so, and I clip it, I don't know, right here, let's say, and we delete this, you'll hear when we run this, that audible click. I don't know if you heard that, but that click is the fact that you cut that waveform too tight. So what you can do is either fade it out, which is an option, or you can do audio layering to help with cheating this audio. And what I mean by that is you can take this audio and then look at the waveforms and say, okay, this guy here plays the same sound and it's about here-ish when this audio kind of repeats almost. So you could pull all of this, delete it, select A to grab all this, copy it, paste it, and then drag this guy up forward like this. And then what you're doing is you're kind of helping to buffer that sound. Now you want to make it so that it kind of matches. So you can just kind of drag this guy up like this and then select from here to the end of the actual audio track, delete it, and then come back here, select right here, come up to effect, fading, and then fade in. And that'll fade this audio in. And then we can take this guy up here. We can click like this, effect, fading, fade out, and that'll fade this out. And then we can grab this guy and pull it to the front of our audio loop like this. And I know that seems kind of counterintuitive, but trust me, once we get it up here and I select and I zoom in, you see where this little yellow line is. You can drag and pull it all the way back and then delete. And then we can just take this guy here and re-drag him back like this. And once you see that yellow line, that means you're matched up with this clip and we're good to go. And now, in theory, everything should play really, really well and you shouldn't hear any clicking at all. So let's take a listen. Oh, it didn't loop. Hold on. And it's not going to loop because of this track here. So let me see if I can get rid of this track. Let me hit select all this, Control X to trash that, and then let's try it. And you can see we have a perfectly looped audio sound. So that'll save a lot of trouble for you and make your life a little bit easier. Now I know that this is really, really loud, so let me pull this guy way down. But that's how you can create a looped audio if you don't cut it just right. You can do this technique and it'll actually make it a lot easier on you. Now, in my case, I'm just going to keep this guy. I mean, we already did the work. We might as well take it. So let's go File, Export, Wave, and then let's call this Creepy Ambience Looped. And let's hit OK and then hit OK. And now we're going to go to our Godot project here. We're going to select our audio stream player. We will grab our looped and drag it in like that. And then if we hit play, let me come over here. And you'll hear our audio just suddenly stopped, right? It played for a little bit and then it just stopped. Now, why is that? Well, that's because we never actually looped this audio. It will play until it's done and then it will stop. That's how Godot generally does all of its audio systems. So you have to come up to your import and you have to tell it to have a loop mode of forward. And then you can re-import and then refresh and it should loop. And there you have it. So that's pretty much the gist of creating event system inside of Godot. We went through the process of setting up our door open animation and our creepy sound. We ran into a small bug where it, for some reason, is not able to play the sound that we're looking for. And we set it up so that we have an event system that we can use to play a sound that's creepy and that's reusable. So we can actually use this elsewhere in our project. We also set up and talked about looping audio and things like that. Now in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to go over how to create interaction system. So things like opening up doors, picking up objects, throwing objects, and if we have enough time, we'll talk about having our AI chase after those objects so we can distract our AI with an object. So look forward to that in the next video. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.